Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now we here to talk about intonation in English speech. Intonation is a complex system of meaning communicated through the rise and a fall of speaker voice. English speakers use it to communicate many different types of meaning. There are two basic intonation patterns, rising and falling. With rising intonation, you have to rise slightly the pitch at the end of the sentence, whereas with falling intonation, you go down a bit. There are four basic pattern intonation in English. They are risings, fallings, and the combination of rising and falling. These four patterns are the most common pattern used in a speaking or a conversation. The question is intonation very important in speaking? Let's take an example. Listen up to this illustration.
I live in Madrid.
As we heard, something is wrong here. The intonation is a little bit strange. Yes, he used the rising intonation to end his sentence, and that is wrong. Because in fact, rising intonation is for the uncompleted sentence. To answer our question, why is intonation important? Intonation is very important in communication as it gives information beyond just the basic meaning of the word. It can express the speaker attitude or feeling about something, as well as giving grammatical information such as distinguishing between a statement and a question. That's why intonation is very important. If we speak without using intonation, the listener may not understand what we mean. Let's talk about the rising intonation and falling intonation. First of all, we start with the rising intonation. Like previously mentioned, rising intonation basically used for the incomplete sentence. For the example, listen to this illustration.
I live in Madrid, but I was born in Canada.
Like the illustration, the rising intonation is in the word Madrid, and the sentence still continue. Let's continue to the other ones, the falling intonations. Falling intonation basically used for showing the end of the sentence. For the example, listen to this illustration.
She's a lawyer.
Like the illustration, the falling intonation is in the word lawyer, and the sentence is complete. Let's talk about it further. How to using intonation in another way. Like as we know, basically raising intonation for the uncompleted sentence, and falling intonation shows the sentence is complete. But intonation is not just like that. Intonation is very flexible, and that means it must another possibility. Let's talk about the falling intonation in the question sentence. Like as we know, falling intonation shows the sentence is complete, but in the question sentence is little bit different. Because on the question sentence, falling intonation used for the question that we don't know the answer. These rules are slightly different from the basic rules. Like as we know, in the basic rules, falling intonation is used for the complete sentence. For example, listen up to this illustration.
Did you have a good time?
Like we heard from the illustration, the tone used is falling intonation. Like the illustration, we don't know how the listener feels, so that's why we use the falling intonation. Now, let's talk about the rising intonation. Like as we know, rising intonation shows the sentence is not complete. Same like the falling intonation, rules of the rising intonation in question sentence is little bit different too. Rising intonation used for the question that we think we know the answer. This rule is little bit different with the basic rules. As we know, in basic rules used for the incomplete sentence. For example, listen up to this illustration.
Are you feeling tired?
Like we heard from the illustration, the tone used is rising intonation. Like the illustration, we think we know how the listener feels. That means we think we know the answer. That's why we use rising intonation. Thanks for watching, and last word for me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.